I wish I could, because these are some good chapters that we're gonna talk about, but,
This class and my business class are somewhat similar.
which one? Management?
I think management information or something.
Yeah.
When I look at the work, I was like, oh my goodness, these are some.
A lot of overlap.
Yeah.
So again, we're doing 3 chapters today. The first one's gonna be performance feedback. As a manager, when you're managing people, performance feedback is going to be something you do all the time. There are times where managers don't utilize it enough, which is not good, because what do you think happens?
You don't know where you're at. Work performance slack.
You don't know where you're at, could be doing subpar work. It's almost like not giving your employees any guidance.
Yeah.
If they don't know where they are or what they're doing, how do you expect them to give you what you want? And I have an article, this is totally not related, but when we were talking about last week about giving people the freedom to kind of do things the way they want to do it, I'll try to remember to email it to you guys because it was directly related to what we talked about last week. Evaluations is one opportunity. It shouldn't be the only opportunity, but it's one opportunity where you have the chance to give feedback to your employees. Obviously, this is something that should be done at least once a year. Some will do it quarterly or twice a year, but at least once a year you should have some type of formal evaluation. When you do these evaluations, you want to make sure that it's not just you as the manager doing talking. It should be an opportunity for both your employee and you to converse and talk to each other. When it's done, the employee should leave having a good feeling. I've been to evaluations where I left feeling sad, degraded, angry, upset, and it was just because of the delivery of my manager and how they delivered the feedback. And it shouldn't be that way. Your employees shouldn't leave with a negative attitude or a bad attitude. They should leave with some, even if the feedback that you have given them is not the best, they should still be able to leave the evaluation feeling like they have potential to improve or potential to do better, and not feeling like they're not worth anything. So that's very important to remember. So why do we do these evaluations? You guys kind of already talked about it. We want to make sure that everybody understands what their expectations are, what they're supposed to be doing. It's a good time to target any training or development opportunities that may be needed by the employee. If they've done something well, it makes sure that we've documented justification for a raise or a promotion. It's also an opportunity for us to provide recognition for them if they've done something good, and obviously it should be a mentoring opportunity. So opportunity for us to speak with them about career development, professional development, things of that nature. What happens before the evaluation? So you should know as a manager, you shouldn't just walk into the evaluation. You have to prepare for it. So these are some of the things that you should be doing before you sit down and have the actual evaluation with your employee. You should be reviewing their job description, looking at the work standards. Obviously, you want to make sure you know the rules and policies. And you may also want to look at some past evaluations as well to kind of see, are they in the same place? Are they growing? Are they doing worse? So these are some preparation steps that you as a manager will need to do before you actually have the evaluation with your employee. Now, there are some evaluation styles that are not very appropriate, right? We've talked about this before in class where there's focus on personality characteristics. We know that's not okay. We have to remember to focus on behavior, right? Mm-hmm. No personality. And here's why. Because obviously, the more you focus on personality, you're doing what? You're attacking them, you're judging them, right? And we don't want to do those types of things, because the only thing that's going to come of that is you're going to have an angry employee, right? They're going to be defensive, they're not going to be happy, which again could spill out to other employees, and you're just creating a negative environment. What some managers would do in addition to their own personal evaluations is they'll have what's called peer reviews where I may pull you in and ask you to review her. Now again, this won't be the only thing that I lean on, but it may be additional information for me to support my own personal evaluation of this employee. So this is one example of what some managers will use. Sometimes they feel like employees will be completely honest.
I did that with my last job at the hospital. Supervisor gave us a review form to evaluate another.
And then you have some employees who may be a little uncomfortable with reviewing or rating their peers because they don't want to get anyone fired or get anyone in trouble. So it can have a double effect. It could be very productive, very positive, or you may get answers that are not completely true or honest. 360 feedback. Anybody know what 360 feedback is? Well, as it says here, it involves a lot of different people. So colleagues, subordinates, customers, everybody gets a chance to contribute to the feedback. And I think that more companies today are starting to implement this more. It's somewhat of a contemporary or newer style of feedback and evaluation. So it's something that you could potentially run into once you get into your careers.
Is that where they have like an automated system to
Sometimes
call
they'll
the customer
include
to
that.
see how they were treated?
Right.
Or, okay.
Yep. Let's see. Talked about preparation. So here are some of the things that would take place during the evaluation interview. So there may be some job description or performance standards that are revised. Again, when you bring that employee in, you're talking to them. Maybe they've started to do some new tasks. And we talked before about revising job descriptions. So the evaluation interview is a good opportunity to see if it needs to be updated or revised. You'll talk about the performance ratings that you're going to use. So you may say, you will be rated from 1 to 5. Make sure they understand what a 1 is. Make sure they understand what a 5 is. You're going to critique accomplishments based on, or each year you'll set goals for the next year. So when you come in to have that evaluation, you'll look at the goals that you set last year and see how that employee measured up to those goals. And then you'll also, again, discuss what your goals are going to be for the next year, so your future performance as well. SCRAM is an acronym that is used for good objectives. So when you're in your evaluation, these are the things you should consider. Specific. You want to make sure that the things you're evaluating the employee on are very specific. You don't want them to be vague, because then there's room for argument. If your objectives are not black and white, not clear, then down the road, if something happens, something's not done right, your employee can say, well, you didn't say X, Y, Z. You left it open for, interpretation. So you want to make sure it's specific. Challenging. We've talked about this before as well. We want to make sure that our employees continue to be challenged. We want it to be something they can reach, but it should be something that they have to put in a little bit of work to reach, right? So we want to make it challenging. Relevant, it should obviously be related to that person's responsibility. So if he works in the cardiology department, I probably shouldn't have any goals related to radiology, right? It needs to be specific to his actual responsibilities. And achievable. As I said up here, we want to make it challenging, but it needs to be realistic and feasible also. It needs to be something that they can actually do. And measurable. The goals that we set need to be something we can actually document, we can measure some type of way. And so that may require a little bit of thought on your part as a manager to try to figure out, what goal you want them to reach, but you have to figure out how you'll be able to measure it. Because if you can't measure it, then what happens? If I can't measure it, they can do anything, they can do any level. If I can't measure it, and then they come back asking for a raise, what do I have to stand on, right? So you want to make it measurable for a lot of different reasons. So remember, scram. Now again, we talked about before, when you're getting ready to finish the interview or finish the evaluation with the employee, you want to end on a positive note, right? You want to end on a note that's giving the employee confidence, giving them encouragement, motivation to either do better or to continue at the pace that they're continuing at. Whatever the case may be, the important take home here is to make sure you end it on a positive note. Now, after the evaluation, it doesn't end there. It may sound like it ends there, but it doesn't end there. It's very important that we follow up. Why do we need to follow up?
Make sure they're on track.
Make sure they're on track. What else?
Same time.
Anybody else? Make sure they're on track. Or what if they're not on track?
How they can.
If we don't follow up, we won't know, right?
What can we do to make them, help them get on
Get
track?
on
Right. So we want to follow up to make sure we're monitoring their progress, see how they're doing. If they're doing well, this is a great chance for us to say, great job, congratulate them, recognize them. In our evaluation, we probably said something along the lines of, if you have any problems, let me know. This is an opportunity for you to follow up on your promise that you said in the evaluation that you were going to be there for them for support as their manager. We want to follow up. Maybe some things aren't going right. Maybe they aren't performing at the level that they need to, but it could be because we've given them an objective that they can't reach. Maybe it's too challenging. Maybe it's just not realistic. So the follow-up gives us the opportunity to change that if we need to. And we get to document. Again, if we don't follow up, we don't know if they're doing good or bad. We don't know what they're doing. And if we don't know what they're doing, we can't document it. So follow-up is very key after the evaluation is done. Here are some things that make the evaluation not go well. Number one, no one's taking it seriously. Okay, how might the manager might not take this seriously? What might happen? That's one thing.
Always avoiding their employees, or I guess they don't have an open door policy.
They don't have an open door policy.
Meaning that
As it directly relates to the evaluation process and what we've talked about. Anybody know? We talked about the manager being prepared, right?
Mhm.
If they don't prepare for the evaluation, what does that show? That they're probably not taking it seriously, right? Now, it needs to be on both sides, so the employee needs to take it seriously too, which means that they can't just come into the evaluation, just kind of, not listening, not taking notes, not asking questions, not talking. So both sides need to take it seriously. Number two, we as a manager only have superficial knowledge, which basically means we don't have anything hardcore to stand on. Maybe we only have hearsay. Maybe we only heard from another employee that they weren't doing their job, but we don't have any hardcore evidence to support that.
Kind of like judging the book by its cover.
Right. Somewhat, yeah. We don't have any documentation. No documentation, right? And the evaluation process only consists of highly subjective assessments. Everybody understand what that means? That would mean that the evaluation process only consists of things that I personally believe are good objectives, as opposed to being very fair and objective. Does that make sense? So again, these are things we don't want to do.
I got a question.
Yeah.
So in an interview, do you have to respond in writing? Like sometime at the end of the interview, they would you like to comment or anything?
To
Is it a
sign.
negative to not to?
You mean when you bring the employee in and you're doing the evaluation with them and we've gone through everything and then they say, do you have any comments?
Yeah, or either they would you like? Because sometimes on an evaluation you have to write whatever.
sign it if you agree with
A lot of
disagree
times they'll
with
make you sign it.
If
When you
agree
don't
with
sign it, yeah, that usually puts you on the blacklist.
Really?
It'll send you to, they're gonna wanna know why you're not signing it. They're gonna put a note on there somewhere that an employee did not sign. Now, don't get me wrong, you don't have to sign anything you don't want to. That's your right. But it's gonna put a flag on there if you don't sign it. They're gonna wanna know they're gonna assume, or they're probably gonna wanna look into more, what's the reason why she didn't wanna sign it? There must be something there, that, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So, no, you don't have to sign it, but a good manager is gonna further investigate why she doesn't wanna sign this, you know what I mean?
Because
Yeah.
you say that my work performance was bad, but I feel that I've been working harder than what you say I
Right.
would. So I don't wanna sign it because I don't agree with it.
Right. So that would be, and again, that's your right, you don't have to sign it, but that would be a great opportunity for the manager to work more closely with that employee to see where the disconnect is. If I have an opinion here and your opinion here, there's a disconnect in here somewhere. And again, that's why it's important that you document stuff. Because if I'm saying that your work performance isn't up to par and I have documentation that stands on that and you don't sign it, I have proof. So if something else happens and you get terminated or you get suspended or whatever, I have my documentation and I have the fact that you didn't sign your evaluation. Right? So documentation is very important. You want to make sure you document everything. You're keeping good records and track
It wasn't really deep.
of your employee progress. So good question. And it does happen.
Mhm.
Some employees won't sign. I've seen employees that don't sign. There's been times where I didn't want to sign.
But you went on a sign.
Well, you know,
Because-
in instances where that happens, I will ask my employer, can I have a few days to look over this before I decide if I want to sign it?
Oh.
No, I don't want to sign this right now, but give me a few days. And then I can, go back and review my notes to see if, yes, I did, maybe I didn't meet
Mhm.
my metrics, but give me some time first
Okay.
before I just sign my name. So I totally understand. I get it. Kind of went over this. All right. Next chapter, coaching. Coaching is very important. So let's jump into this. Now, most of us, when we hear coaching, we probably think about sports, teams,
Understood.
but we do this every day when we're managers. Probably, if you're a good manager, you're probably doing some type of coaching every day. And it's very important that it happens if you plan to be an effective leader. Here's some traits that effective coaches will do. They're obviously going to look and act like a leader. Communication is going to be there. They're going to keep their workers informed. They're going to lead by example, right? If there's workers that have problems or issues, we're going to be there to support them, and we're going to listen. And in a sense, really listen, because sometimes we listen, but we don't really listen, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes you got to do it in class. Just kidding. So I think, I don't know. We're gonna direct negative feedback at the results, again, focusing on behavior, not personality. And we're gonna be quick to praise. If somebody does something well, we have to be on top of it. These are all things that effective coaches do. We wanna, again, lead by example, so set good examples. We wanna provide psychological support, and we'll come back to that one a little bit later. When emergencies happen, which again, we're working in healthcare, so it could happen, we have to be able to jump in sometimes if we're short of staff or we need extra help. And if we're coaching someone, we have to be good at it, right? We have to be technically and professionally competent in that area. It goes back to listening. Listening is very complementary, very important to coaching, because as you're coaching, if you're listening to the people, it's going to make your job as a coach easier. Whereas if you're just coaching them based on your own thoughts and your own opinions, it may not be as effective. One way that you can become or continue to be an effective coach is to manage by wandering around, or as we talked about earlier, in terms of rounding. So one example is, instead of having everyone come to your office, go to their office or go to their area, wherever they work, because it shows you being visible. Again, we want to listen more than we talk. As you're walking around, ask employees what's going on, how their day is going, are they having any issues, are they having any problems? That way, you're getting the opportunity to see areas where you may be able to coach, right? Calling employees by their names. Why is that important?
Because you feel like they know you.
Right.
Relationship
It's more personal,
building,
right?
yeah.
Relationship.
It's more personal. So that's why, you know, when I'm sending emails, I try to always start it out by addressing the person by their name instead of just starting the email. It gives a more personal feel. So when you're calling employees by their names, they feel like they matter. They feel like, oh, she knows my name. You know, they feel more important. They feel cared about, especially when you're asking about their families, their special interests. I may want to ask Carmen how her daughter's doing. And she may say, wow, she remembered. You know? So it's very important. This part makes it very personal. And again, once you're getting into a personal bubble with that person, again, it makes it easier to coach them. Opinions. We should ask them for their advice and their opinions, right? They're working in this area every day. They know what's going on. They may have great ideas. If we catch people doing something right, again, we want to give praise. Some managers will carry around a notepad to take notes because maybe they don't remember everything. Maybe they wander around to 5 different offices and they may forget something. So some will take around a notepad or a piece of paper or a sticky note to kind of make notes of the things that they've heard as they're walking around. Spotting activities, facilities, problems that need fixing. I once worked for a manager that would walk around and he would go into the, obviously not the women's bathroom, but he would go into the bathrooms and see if they were out of toilet paper. These were things that he included in his rounding. So it wasn't just to walk around to talk to people. He would walk around and see what might be broken, to see what needs fixing. Maybe the elevator's not acting right today. We need to put a out of order sign there. So I mean, no, that wasn't his job per se, but it was something that he included in his rounding just to have more of a pulse on how things are going. Because if you spot things that do need fixing, that may be affecting that employee's ability to do their job, right? Again, if we're walking around and we're talking to people, when we do have staff meetings, maybe we can cut down the time on those staff meetings because I've been walking around, so I already know kind of some of the issues and things that are going on, and then we don't have to discuss them in our meetings, right? Now, managing by walking around may sound really glorious and may sound like just the thing to do. Well, there could be some problems with it that we need to consider. Some people might think you're a spy.
I'm always watching you.
Why is she always walking around? What is she trying to find? Why is she always looking over my shoulder? That's what people may think if you're walking around, that you're looking over their shoulder or you're micromanaging. So it could be perceived as a bad thing from your employees, right? You don't want to, it should seem genuine. So when you're walking around, when you're conversing, when you're rounding, you don't want it to feel fake. You don't want employees to feel like you're doing it just because. Right.
Get in my
Right.
business.
So it should be more than just, how are you doing? It should feel really genuine when you're walking around. Otherwise, it's going to be perceived as being fake, right? And we don't want it to seem like we're interrupting people's work, right? I'm busy. Why is she always walking around interrupting me? I'm trying to get my work done. Or we don't want it to seem like we're gossiping because we're being personal, because we're talking to people. We don't want people to perceive that as being gossip, right? And we don't want it to be perceived as us nitpicking, which goes back to, you know, is she micromanaging me? Is she watching over my shoulder? So these are the things that may be perceived by your employees if you do implement this management style. So while I think it's a great thing, you have to keep in mind that there may be some employee out there that may think you're doing some or one or all of these things as you're walking around. Another thing that you have to be careful of as it relates to a coach is there's a line, and you have to balance that line between helping someone and not helping them too much. I have the challenge of balancing that line every day as an instructor. Because if you have it in you to coach, you always want to help people. But you don't want to overhelp, right? Because then what happens?
They get lazy and reliant.
They get lazy. Yes, let's say that one again. They get lazy. What else? Anybody else?
We're gonna expect you to come help all the time.
They're going to expect you to help all the time. Are they growing?
No.
Are they developing?
No.
Are we enabling them?
Yes.
Yes.
So you have to balance that line of, sure, we want to be effective coaches, but we don't want to help them too much. And it's very difficult. This takes time and wisdom, and this is something that you will grow in every day to learn when's the best time to help and when's the time to say, you know what, you have to do this one on your own, or you know what, I can't extend that deadline for you. So you have to, it's a very challenging task, but it's something that as a coach we have to keep in our mind that we can't always be the ones that help. Now, having said that, we do have to advocate for our employees. We want to protect them, we have to defend them if it comes to it. We want to make sure that we are providing them with all the resources that they need to be able to grow and develop, which may also include us empowering them, giving them a little bit of authority, giving them some independence to do some things on their own, right? Here we are back at feedback. How does feedback intertwine or relate with coaching?
It provides some areas where they need to work on their
Right.
weaknesses and tell them like some of their strengths.
Right? So the feedback will provide some areas for them to work on, which, again, as a coach, gives us an opportunity as well to help coach them through those opportunities, right? You had a
No,
comment?
I was just reading.
So what do we praise?
Good work performance.
Good work performance,
Good attendance.
attendance, anything else?
For making an effort to.
Effort? What about
Initiating.
Catch on.
What about personal things? What if you have an employee that helps another employee? What if they do an act of kindness? You praise that, right?
Had to look up.
Because that's creating a better work environment, a tighter team. So basically anything that's above and beyond. We definitely want to praise anything that's above and beyond. They're providing helpful, doing something helpful. Maybe they did something that wasn't expected, right? Not usually a part of their everyday job. All those things we want to make sure we praise. What don't we praise? Or do we praise everything? What don't we praise?
If they're doing a poor job and you praise them anyway, it's like, you're doing real good, knowing in the back of your mind they're not really doing well, but you praise them anyway. That's like false.
Right? So we don't want to give them any false ideas, which goes along with flattery. We don't want to just praise them just to make them feel good if they haven't done anything, right? What if they haven't earned it?
Definitely don't.
We don't want to praise them then, right? Here we are. I know for a fact this gentleman is very shy, right? So I may not want to praise him if it's going to embarrass him, right?
Yeah.
It might be an example of that. We don't want to praise them, right? Because it may embarrass the employee.
But
And-
there's other ways you can do that though.
No,
Send them an email,
definitely.
a note, a post-it
I could
note
do
or
a note. I
something.
could bring him in one-on-one
Yeah.
into my office as opposed to praising him in the staff meeting.
In
So
front of
we
everybody.
want to praise, but you want to consider the
Right.
employee as well. And if you know they're shy, they get embarrassed quickly, you may not want to praise them at that particular time. And this last one's important. If you don't know for sure that the person has done anything, please don't praise them, because you may have made a mistake.
Really, like, what?
If I praise Crystal
Really do it?
and Candace really did it, what have I done?
You just made Candace mad.
I made Candace mad. What else have I done?
You put some rift between the two of them.
I might have created some type
Yeah.
of What else?
Attention, yep.
What else have I done?
Just give
Falsely.
You
I-
just supposed
right.
to give somebody credit for.
I've
what
given
they
her
do.
a false idea that she did something right when she didn't.
She's not gonna wanna do
Right.
anything else. but-
She may not want to do the work anymore because she didn't give me praise for it. Somebody else got it. So there's all types of things that could go wrong or happen if I praise the wrong person. Or let's say I don't praise her, or I don't praise her, but maybe I praised not necessarily the wrong person, but I just praised someone who didn't deserve it, right? So you want to make sure before you give any praise, you're 100% sure that they've earned it, right?
Because that person would be like, I don't really doing it, but okay.
Right. So you just want to make sure. And whatever you have to do to make sure, that could be, that could vary from one thing to another, but the point here is that you want to be sure before you just hand out praise. Again, we talked about this before. We don't want to delay the praise. We want to make sure that it's time sensitive, it happens, right when it happens or close to it. We don't want to delay it. All right. Criticism. How do we feel about criticism?
Constructive, well.
Constructive.
So everybody's saying constructive. It's the key word here.
Constructive.
Constructive criticism's okay.
Yes.
Not tearing a person down, but trying to build them up in a way. You're showing them that negative side, but you making a positive, however we can do it.
Not degrading.
Right.
Okay.
Great.
So is how we react to criticism, does it somewhat depend on who's delivering it?
Yes.
So how it's
Sometimes.
delivered.
What about who?
That too.
Would you take the criticism differently if the President of the United States gave it to you as opposed to your manager?
It depends on how he delivers it.
But, so it doesn't depend at all on who's delivering it?
Sometimes
I
it does
can't
because
say, it depends.
the president you could be doing a bad thing and the president acknowledges, okay, you need to work more on this, and then they don't care how he delivered it. It's just the fact that he was the president
Right.
and he gave me this criticism.
Right.
You
You may take it differently, right?
Yeah.
Depending on who it is.
Interpret it.
I know I have.
it's bad, but it's the president.
If I've gotten criticism
that,
from
yeah.
if I've gotten criticism from the president of the company, I've taken it differently than the criticism I got from just my manager.
Yeah.
I personally have. We're going to react to the criticism depending on how legitimate we believe it is. Is this legit? Like, is this for real criticism, or is this just something they made up, right? Who else hears it? We're definitely going to,
React
you know,
to
if
that,
if you're criticizing someone in a staff meeting,
You didn't have to do that. You
as
could've pulled me to the
opposed
side
to
though.
in their office or in
Right.
your
You could've pulled me
office,
to the side and told me.
they're going to respond differently or react differently, right? Now, they're also going to respond to the criticism depending on internally how they feel. If they're very fragile internally, personally, they're going to react to it a little differently from someone who is a little bit stronger, right? And stress. If we're already stressed out and we get criticized, we're going to react differently than if
It's gonna make it
we're
worse.
okay, right? So all of these things play into how we react to criticism. So as a coach and a manager, you have to keep that in mind when you're providing feedback and criticism to people. How do we criticize but still allow the employee to maintain some dignity and don't feel degraded?
You
Criticize in
don't-
private.
You're doing
One-on-one, behind closed doors, much better, right?
Yeah.
And then the second thing is, in addition to just criticizing them and telling them what they did wrong,
However,
tell them how to make it right. Tell them how to correct that behavior so that they don't make the same mistake over and over, right? So that's very important. You got a comment?
Constructive criticism.
Yeah, here it is. You guys all said it. Constructive. You want to make sure the criticism is constructive, right? I think we're out of time, guys.
Like you're slacking in this area, however, you're not doing this bad, but you can do this to do better.
Right. As long as you let them know what they should be doing or what they could do to improve it, then you're okay. We'll pick up the rest of this next class because we're out of time. But isn't this so much fun?
Yeah. What about class?
Coaching is very important.